Good morning, boys and girls. Now, before we get started, we are going to take some notes today, but I do understand that some of us do not have our social studies notebooks at home. If you do not, just please make sure you get these notes copied in your notebook tomorrow. We are not going to finish these notes today. We're just going to start them because I want you guys to preview a little bit and predict a little bit of what's going to happen after this war. So we're going to start today learning about the American Revolution. And in order to start with the American Revolution, we have to first understand how everything got started, how the colonists were feeling towards the British government, and why we eventually decided to break away from Britain. That started with the French and Indian War. Now, this war did not take place in North Carolina. This war actually took place in the Ohio Valley and around the Great Lakes. Now, the Great Lakes are up near Michigan and Wisconsin. They're more north by where Ohio is today. Now, the reason it says Ohio Valley and not in Ohio is because Ohio was not a state yet. It was just the valley. It was that area. It was that land that different countries were fighting over. Now, even though it's called the French and Indian War, it was not just the French fighting with American Indians. This war was actually fought between the British and the French. So we'll say it was fought between Britain, excuse me, I spelled that wrong, Britain and France. It began in 1754 and it actually lasted 9 years. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, the reason that it's called the French and Indian War is because the Iroquois Indians that we learned a little bit about earlier, our Iroquois Indians supported both sides. So they supported both the French and the British, not at the same time per se, but they did support both sides during the war. So that's why it's called the French and Indian War, because a lot of the Indians did side more with the British. So that's why it was not called the French and British War, because France and Britain had other wars previously to this. The reason that it was fought was over land in North America. So both countries were fighting to have the most land control in North America. This is after the 13 colonies were established. So this is more in the northern colonies that this takes place. So not very many colonists from North Carolina would have gone up to fight, but over the 9 years, a few of them did, but this was more with the northern colonists. As we talked about a little bit previously, this did last 9 years. And it ended on February 10th, 1763. So it was fought for 9 years. Now, the way that this war ended is that they signed what is known as the Treaty of Paris. This was not signed in Paris. This was still signed, on North America soil. The French lost, and because they lost, they had to give up most of their land in North America to the British. So Britain won, and so they were able to kind of kick France out a little bit more. Most of their land to the British. Now, I want to make sure it's very clear that it's most of their land. It's not all of their land that they had to give up. Another effect from this war, another thing that happened because of this war, Britain now was in a lot of debt. So we can say Britain was now in debt. I apologize, I spelled that wrong. Was now in debt. The reason that they were now in debt is because Britain had to pay 10,000 soldiers for their help in fighting this war. The way that they went around this debt, so because they were in debt, they passed new taxes on the colonists. Now, we learned yesterday, you guys read yesterday, about Culpeper's rebellion and how they started to rebel against the British government for passing taxes that they felt were unfair. This is now another kind of issue that the colonists are going to have with Britain and with the government, because they're passing these taxes on the colonists to pay for wars that they didn't necessarily want or that they necessarily didn't fight in. Another issue is that the colonists were not being represented in Britain in the government. So all these rules and laws and taxes were coming in, but they weren't getting a say. They weren't getting a vote on how they felt things should be done. Okay, so what you're going to do now, my friends, is you are going to now go to your assignment for today. We're going to talk about the causes and effects of this war. So why did it happen? What were some results of this war? Those are all in your notes. So if you need to rewatch this, you're more than welcome to. Also, if, again, you do not have all these notes written down, please make sure that you do have them written tomorrow when we are back in school. We are going to finish this up, just talk a little bit more about how the colonists did react to this. I think we can take a really good guess as to how they would. I wouldn't be happy if I got taxed on things for a war I didn't fight in or didn't want. But you're going to answer that question just so I can kind of see how you're feeling, kind of where you think things are going to go with again, this revolution, the American Revolution, with us breaking away from British rule. All right, boys and girls, go ahead and hop back over to your assignment, get that done, turn it in, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.